Our meeting order. First item we have is hearing and deliberation on agency budgets. We have the Kansas Human Rights Commission. We'll start out with Molly Pratt, KLRD, Agency Budget and Analysis. Molly, welcome committee.
Hi, Chairman Billinger and committee members. My name is Molly, and I will be presenting the budget for the Kansas Human Rights Commission. Here with me today is the Executive Director, Ruth Glover, and also the Assistant Director, Robert Easterling. So the Kansas Human Rights Commission investigates and works to resolve complaints of discrimination in the areas of employment, housing, and public accommodations. Under Kansas law and federal law, individuals who wish to bring an employment discrimination lawsuit must exhaust all administrative remedies prior to being afforded the right to sue. An individual exhausts his administrative remedies by filing a charge of discrimination with the agency and/or the Federal Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. The agency then investigates the charge to determine whether probable cause exists and whether to afford the complainant the right to sue. In 2022, the legislature approved the budget of $1.5 million, including $1,060,000 in state general funds. The agency reappropriated $36,107 state general funds from fiscal year 2022 into fiscal year 2023, changing the approved amount to approximately $1,550,000, including $1.1 million in state general funds. So I will cover the agency's budget request in more detail after discussing the different funds that they use. However, you can see on pages 2 and 3 that the governor concurs with the agency's request. So the agency has 3 different funding sources. They obviously have money from the state general fund, and the agency has expended about $1 million to $1.1 million in state general funds since fiscal year 2015, and that trend is expected to continue. The Employment Discrimination Federal Fund arises out of the agency's annual contract with the EEOC to process and resolve complaints of discrimination that are jointly filed under Kansas statutes and federal regulations. The EEOC pays the agency a specified amount to investigate a set number of duly filed cases. The current cost per case resolution that the agency receives is $830. The EEOC lowered the amount of case resolutions for which it would contract due to there being lower than normal case resolutions during the federal measurement period because there are several vacancies in the agency's investigative staff. However, the agency has maintained a clearance rate of complaints of over 100%. The agency expects expenditures from this federal fund to outpace revenue in fiscal year 2024 by about $95,000. And finally, the Education and Training Fee Fund arises out of the agency's statutory duty to provide education to the general public about discrimination laws and how to prevent discrimination. Expenses are generally associated with the agency's annual employment law seminar. However, this hasn't been held in recent years due to the COVID pandemic. Due to this, expenditures decreased to $3 in fiscal year 2022. The agency has instead hosted a series of webinars which lower expenditures and revenue, but the agency is planning to hold the seminar in fiscal year 2024, where it will likely charge approximately $85 per attendee, and the agency expects about 250 people to attend, causing revenue to increase to approximately $21,000 in fiscal year 2024. So, on page 7, you will see the detailed analysis for fiscal year 2023. The agency's revised estimate is $1.5 million, including $1.1 million in state general funds. This is an all funds decrease of about $71,000 or 4.6% below the amount approved by the 2022 legislature. The budget request includes about $996,000 in salaries and wages. This is a decrease of $122,062 or 10.9% below the amount approved by the 22 legislature. This is primarily due to there being several vacant positions in the agency. Also included in the estimate is about $455,000 in contractual services, or an increase of $54,525, or 13.6% above the amount approved. This is due to increased cost associated with rental rates for the Landon State Office Building, as well as costs associated with technology programs and services. The agency contracts with the Kansas Legal Services to provide mediation services to parties involved in a complaint of discrimination. Likewise, in lay of filling the chief counsel position, the agency contracts with outside counsel who, among other things, reviews and revises the Kansas administrative regulations. The commodities expenditures is expected to be about $8,600. This is a decrease of $14,737, or about 63% below the amount approved. Expenses associated with the annual employment law seminar are not budgeted, which partially explains which explains the decrease in commodities. And finally, capital outlay. Request includes $16,708 in capital outlay. This is an increase of almost $11,000, or 181% above the amount approved. This is due to recommendations by the Office of Information and Technology Services that the agency replace firewalls and update all of their technological security. The request also includes 23 full-time employee positions, and the Governor concurs with the agency's request. On page 10, you will see the fiscal year 2024 analysis. The governor also concurs with the agency's request, which includes $1.5 million, including $1.1 million in state general funds. This is an all funds increase of $21,627, or 1.5%, including a state general fund decrease of $22,212, or about 2% from the fiscal year 2023 revised estimate. The salaries and wages estimate is about $1.1 million. The request includes an increase of about $70,000, or 7% above the fiscal year 2023 revised estimate. And this is primarily due to increased employer contributions, longevity payments, and similar items. For contractual services, the request includes about $406,000. This is a decrease of about $48,000, or 10.6% below the fiscal year 2023 revised estimate. The agency expects that updates to the services will be completed. Likewise, the agency anticipates that permanent positions will be filled, which would eliminate the cost incurred from temporary staffing agencies. Also included is about $25,000 in commodity expenditures. This is an increase of about $16,000, or 189% above the fiscal year 2023 revised estimate. And this increase is primarily due to the agency's plan on hosting the annual employment law seminar for the first time since fiscal year 2019. Projected expenditures for the seminar are based on actual costs that the agency incurred in fiscal year 2019. And finally, capital outlay includes about $1,000 in expenditures, which is a decrease of approximately $15,000 below the fiscal year 2023 revised estimate. And once again, the agency is requesting 23 full-time employee positions, and the governor concurs. If the chair would like me to explain the different programs the agency has, I can, but I've summarized those in the analysis, so I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Molly. I don't think you need to explain unless, does anyone need further explanation? I think you did a real good job.
Thank you.
Any questions for Molly? Seeing none, thank you, Molly.
Okay.
Next, we'll have Ruth Glover, the Executive Director of the Kansas Human Rights Commission, excuse me.
Good morning. As Molly, as you already know, I'm Ruth Glover with the Kansas Human Rights Commission. We did provide a handout yesterday The first thing is that we are not making any appeals from the governor's budget recommendations, and we're not asking for any additional money either this year or for next year. Just to provide you some information about the commission, we are the state's anti-discrimination agency. The Kansas Act Against Discrimination prohibits discrimination in employment, housing, and public accommodation. So that means that we protect people where they work, where they live, and where they consume goods and services that are offered to the public. Now, we're a neutral investigative agency, so we're not on the sides of the individuals who file complaints with us, and we're not on the sides of the organizations that receive those complaints. We have a two-part approach to achieving our mission. First of all, we receive complaints of discrimination, we investigate them, and we work to resolve them. And secondly, we do public outreach in the hopes that if people can learn what discrimination and harassment are, then it won't occur in the future. We have some highlights from fiscal year 2022. We received 799 complaints in fiscal year 2022, and that has been less than what we've received in previous years. Normally, we're receiving 900 to 1,000 complaints per year, and this year we're annualizing out to 1,000 complaints received this year. Through December, we had received 532 complaints, and so if you annualize that out, that's over 1,000 complaints this year. We were able to resolve 814 complaints last year. We did have some vacancies in our investigative staff. We had one special investigator who retired. We promoted another special investigator to a supervisor position, and then a third left for a job with another state agency. And that always has an impact on us because we have such a small investigative staff. We only have 7 special investigators. So we thought it was good that we were able to resolve more complaints than what we received, even with a small staff, with those vacancies. We recovered a little over $1 million on behalf of individuals who had filed complaints of discrimination with us. Now, that does not include resolutions that do not include monetary amounts. Resolutions don't have to include monetary amounts. It may be providing training, maybe providing a neutral letter of reference, providing some type of accommodation that's been requested for a disability, perhaps setting up meetings with management or a supervisor, something of that nature that doesn't involve dollar figures. In fiscal year 2022, we were able to train 12,960 individuals. That was primarily through our online harassment prevention training program. We had 12,347 individuals who went through that training, and it's a very effective training. We received positive feedback about it. 91% said that they had a full understanding after taking the course of what harassment is versus 66% before they took the course. We have pivoted from in-person trainings to a lot of Zoom trainings or Teams training. We have resumed in-person trainings if the organization wants that. But we found that organizations still like to have the Zoom trainings or the Teams trainings. If you go to page 3, you'll see that on line 2, the funding for fiscal year 2024 for State General Fund is about $705,000 less than what we received in fiscal year 2008. So that's about 40% less SGF than what we received in 2008. Total funding, if you look at line 6, we receive about $681,000 less total funding than what we had in fiscal year 2008. So that's about 31% less than what we received in 2008. We do have 23 FTE authorized, but in reality, we only fill about 16 of those positions, and we only budget for those 16 positions. Currently, we have 13 positions filled, but we're working to fill the vacancies that we do have. There's some graphs that follow. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Ruth. Questions? Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make comment. I had a couple questions and you answered them. You did a good job of covering the issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Ruth.
All right, thank you very much.
Committee, I think we'll just go ahead and work this one unless someone has any adjustments. Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move we accept the governor's
Excuse
recommendation.
me.
Okay.
I first need to close the hearing, which I'll do. And now we will do deliberations. Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move we accept the governor's recommendation budget for FY 2023 and 2024.
I have a motion and a second by Senator Kirshen. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll have a hearing and deliberation on agency budget, judicial council. We will start out with Martin DeBoer, KLRD Agency Budget Analysis. Martin, welcome to committee.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, my name is Martin DeBoer. I'm the fiscal analyst that will be presenting the judicial council's budget. To begin with, they're in the judicial branch, so by statute, this is required to be included in the governor's budget recommendation, but the governor does not actually make a recommendation on their budget. The Judicial Council is a 10-member council. They have 13 advisory boards and 2 ad hoc committees. And they do various different tasks, including for the legislature. So the Judicial Council receives and considers suggestions related to the administration of justice in Kansas, from the legislature, the Supreme Court, and other courts, the bar, and from the public. So the council identifies areas that need improvement and assign projects to advisory committees as needed. And they receive and review the work product of other advisory committees and take appropriate action. I'd like to start on page 7 with their budget. And actually, my apologies, let's turn to page 4. Page 4. Recently, there was a bill introduced. They are currently fee funded. There's a recent bill introduced, 2023 HB 2184, that redirects certain judicial branch fee funds to the SGF, similar to what happened last year for judicial branch. So this reduces the agency's reliance on fees and appropriated funds from the SGF for agency operations. Down there below is a look at FY24. So for FY24, the agency estimates that about approximately $540,000 would be redirected to the SGF. And of that amount, $184,000 is from the Judicial Council Fund, $355,000 is from the Publication Fee Fund. And they will also, any carry forward balances will then also be redirected to the SGF. So all the funds that they have at the end of the fiscal year will be redirected to the SGF. So the agency in FY24, and I know we're jumping ahead a little bit, they're expecting expenditures of $694,000. And this is actually $29,000 below the amount of revenue that would be brought into the SGF. So their expenditures are less than the revenue generated into the SGF. So with that said, I'd like to start on page 7 for fiscal year 2023. The legislative approved amount for the agency is $645,000, as well as 5 FTE positions. Approximately 82.7% of their budget is for personnel expenditures. There were no changes made after the approved amount. So the agency's revised estimate is $645,000, all from special revenue funds and that 5 FTE positions, which is the same as the approved amount. And again, they are in the judicial branch of the governor. It says the governor concurs, it's their standard language we use, but by statute, these will be included. Can stand for 23 or move to 24.
Any questions on 23? Seeing none, please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman. FY24 starts on page 9, the top of the page. So the agency requests $694,000, all from special revenue funds and expenditures, and 5 FTE positions for 24. So this is an increase of $48,000, or 7.5% above the FY23 revised estimate. The increase is primarily due to changes in the salaries and wages to fund a full-time administrative assistant position. They previously had a part-time position, but it was inadequate and insufficient for administrative support needs. So that's approximately $31,000 for that position. So again, at the bottom, this is a pass-through and by statute. So I'll stand for any questions on FY24.
Thank you, Martin. Any questions for Martin? I guess the question I would have, Martin, on, we're globally doing all the salaries. Do we need to do it with this, or means it's a pass-through or not?
It's not a pass-through because you're still part of appropriating the funds. But if you wanted to pull out his salary increase, because that, my understanding is going to be a global and looked at separately.
Right.
So if that's something you want to take note of, you can leave it in, we can revisit, or you can pull it out now and then revisit. It's really up to how you want to approach that.
I don't know that we need to pull it out. I just think we need to say that, you know, all salaries are being looked at just like we've been on all our committees, so. Senator Petty.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. On the HB 2184, where is it? I mean,
Currently-
do you know what currently, where?
I believe it'll be heard in general government budget, because the agency also presents their budget in that. So we have not had a hearing yet on that. So we're in the process of getting that taken care of. So if that bill does go into effect, just to follow up, if I may, if that bill goes into effect, then that would change the funding, and the funding will come from SGF other than currently in this budget for special revenue funds.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Martin.
Thank you.
Next, we'll have Janelle Williams, Fiscal Officer for the Kansas Judicial Council. Janelle, welcome to committee.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee, for allowing me to briefly summarize what Martin has said. We are requesting, well, again, Janelle Williams, I'm the Fiscal Officer for the Judicial Council. I have worked for the council for over 35 years, so if you have any questions. The Judicial Council's budget request is significantly different this year, whereby we are requesting a shift in funding from 100% fee-funded to being funded 100% by the State General Fund. This is due briefly to a gradual decline in the sale of our book sales, our publications, as well as a kind of a gradual decrease in revenue received from docket fees, which are our two sources of revenue that have become somewhat unreliable and less stable. I mostly just want to kind of point that out, that's overall our request. I want to point out that the Judicial Council has always been committed to fiscal efficiency and diligent regarding its expenditures. We're always looking for ways to reduce expenses, and in fact, there have been many years that our actual expenses are well below what was approved by the legislature. I wanted to reassure you that we are continuing to be mindful and good stewards of our funding, regardless of source. And with that, I'm happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Janelle. So you've been there 30, how many years?
A little over 35.
35. And has it always had 5 FTEs or?
No, actually, there have been variances through the years. We've had a program that's no longer with us now, and at one point we had 7. When I started, there were 4. So in 1986, and prior to that, actually that 1989 is when I came on full-time, and that was our 4th FTE. And then in 2013, we added a 5th.
I just figured I'd ask them for a little that 35-year knowledge, because probably a lot of folks wouldn't know. Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your presentation. If I heard you right, you said there had been a decrease in docket fees. Why would that be?
Well, I'm not sure I can answer that question. You know, we started docket fees started receiving docket fees in 2003 in lieu of state general funding. At that time, we were receiving approximately $240,000 in those docket fees. You know, I think there are other factors involved that I'm not aware of that judicial branch could probably tell me why there was, whether it be filings have decreased. We receive 0.99% of those docket fees. So over the course of the 20 years since that went into place, it's gradually, you know, COVID was a big factor, and it has not gone back up to those amounts. But that would you know, be one recent decrease that could cause that. I'm not sure if you know, judicial branch could help me with those statistics. I'm sure they could, but that's, now we started with 240,000, now we're down to like 180.
Senator Fag.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as I listen to that, we've been trying to gear up with judges, with defense, but our docket fees are going down. That's the thing I was having a little trouble with.
I'd have to refer to judicial branch regarding, their revenue.
How long has it been since they've increased the docket fee? Is it,
Again, I think that's a better question for judicial
Okay,
branch, but good question. I think somebody here could probably address that for sure.
is there someone would like to address that?
I'm Stephanie Smith, Judicial Administrator for the Judicial Branch. So during the pandemic, we had a dramatic decrease in docket fee funds coming in. And so, a lot of that was due to not issuing traffic tickets, decrease in limited action filings, just a decrease in filings across the board. Since that time, it has steadily increased, but we are not yet to the point of pre-pandemic. So we're keeping tabs on that. That's one of the reasons why we came in last year and asked to move to state general fund funding because of the instability of docket fees.
Senator Fag? You good? Okay. So how long has it been since the docket fees have increased or changed?
So I would have to look at that. Okay. I believe it was like the 2015 session, but I would have to go back and look. It was right before I came on as CFO of the Judicial Branch, my previous position.
So do they vary in cost as far as a docket for a speeding ticket versus criminal case?
Yes. It depends on the case type. What we have seen is when docket fees do go up, there is a correlation so what's estimated, you think docket fees go up, you increase them, and so you're going to get that amount going forward, but there is a correlating decrease in filings when that happens. So it hasn't always panned out when you do have increases.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Senator Petty, did you have a question for her or the other?
Either one.
Janelle or?
It's Janelle.
Okay.
So you mentioned in your testimony about the fact with the piece of legislation, I was just curious, when it says that there was the general fund was estimated at 537,840, and then you were proposing transferring to other areas of fees into the general fund as well. So is that in that legislation, or is that in a?
Yes, in that HB 2184, it's essentially redirecting all of our fee funds into, and as well as any carryover balances into the state general fund.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Senator Fag.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm thinking about docket fees. If you increase them, and you said that the number of filings go down, if you do that scenario, you're going to be hearing less court cases. Am I understanding that right? In that case, maybe people's filing that decide it's not worth it? So I just find that kind of interesting.
Do you know the answer? So a lot of times those are the limited actions cases or small claims that don't take much court time at all. So that's what happens is it's the criminal cases don't decrease. So, okay.
Any other questions? Seeing none, Janelle, thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Committee will close our hearing and open up for deliberation. Senator Fag.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move we accept the governor's recommendation for judicial council budget for FY 2023 and 2024.
And look at the salaries.
And look at the salaries at a later date.
Yep. We have a motion. We have a second. Second by Senator Kirshen. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll have a hearing and deliberation on agency budget for the judicial branch. We'll start out with Martin DeBoer, KLRD Agency Budget Analysis. Martin, welcome committee.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, again. Similar to Judicial Council, they are in the judicial branch by statute. They are required to be included in the governor's budget recommendation. First few pages are a general overview, as you're very familiar with at this point. I'd like to start on page 7 with the FY 2023 analysis. So the 2022 during the 2022 session, there's one adjustment made to the approved amount of 184.6 that was appropriated, and it's relatively small. It's a $451 reappropriation of unspent SGF monies. So the agency's estimate is 184.8 million in expenditures, and this includes 172.5 million from the SGF in FY23. This is an all funds increase of 132,000, or less than 0.1% above the FY23 approved amount. The recommendation adds 1.6 million from the electronic filing fee funding for operational expenditures for the e-filing, and 255,000 in federal funds for a new burn grant discretionary fund. So the awarded grant will establish a new veteran treatment court in the 18th Judicial District Court located in Sedgwick County over a 36-month period. And these courts are specialized in dockets that utilize therapeutic and problem-solving procedures to address underlying factors that may be contributing to a party's involvement in the criminal justice system, like mental illness or drugs, alcohol, or other addictions. Increase is partially offset by a reduction of 1.7 million from the docket fee fund. So the agency's estimate includes 2,002 FTE positions in FY23, and this is an increase of the 2 FTE positions above the approved amount. The request does delete 20 FTE positions in the district and appellate courts and adds 21 FTE positions in the information services and the Office of Judicial Administration. So the agency's revised estimate also includes capital improvement expenditures of 100,000 for the library stacks, compact shelving, and 110,000 in the agency's IT help desk. And this is a reduction in their capital improvement expenditures of 190,000, or 47.5% from the approved budget. There's a few miscellaneous expenditure increases that cover a variety of areas. The Joint Committee on State Building Construction has heard their capital improvement requests and has approved that. So on the following page, again, this is statutorily required to be included in the governor's budget submission. I can stand for questions on FY23 or proceed to 24.
Questions on 23? Seeing none, please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman. 24 starts on page 10. Here, the agency requests 206.8 million. This includes 194.8 million from the SGF and 2007 FTE positions for FY24. So this is an increase of 22.1 million, or 11.9%, and 5 FTE positions above the agency's FY23 revised estimate. The agency does have a request that includes capital improvement expenditures, and this includes 300,000 SGF for the office restructuring and 50,000 SGF for Judicial Branch Learning Center. Those are all explained on the very last page of this budget analysis. So they do have an enhancement request for non-judicial salary increases. So this request includes 9.4 million SGF for salary increases for non-judicial employees for FY24. This is approximately 8.5% salary increase and is designed to offset inflation pressures. This number was derived by the Consumer Price Index at the time of the budget submission. Number 2 there, you have an enhancement for new FTE positions. Here you have 680,000 SGF and an enhancement of 5 FTE positions for additional staff. You have additional staff for IT security. Would like to note that after this was submitted, conversations, there was a mistake made in IBAR. So that's actually will be 4 FTE positions for that IT security, but the funding doesn't change. There's an access to justice lead, so the agency requests 94,000 in 1 FTE position for a lead district court self-help center technical assistance. On the following page, on page 11, you have a deputy clerk specialist. This is 66,000 and one FTE position to assist with the additional duties, including providing technical assistance and training to the court clerks in all 105 counties. And then you have a director of criminal justice and family services. So the agency requests 112,000 and one FTE to oversee child welfare, family and probation services to ensure district courts are receiving the level of support that they're needed. Number 3 in the middle of the page, you have a judicial salary increase. The request includes 6.9 million SGF, and this increase provides a 15.3% salary increase for judges in FY24. A little bit of background, the agency knows that according to a July 1, 2022 judicial survey performed by the National Center for State Courts, Kansas district judge pay ranks about 43rd out of 50 states. Before adjusting for cost of living. There's a table there that has a little bit of breakdown of the positions, their current salaries, and what the agency is requesting in FY24, those adjustments. Number 4 is our catch-all, the all other adjustments. So in addition to those enhancements, there is an increase of 5.1 million, and this includes increases of 5.3 from the SGF. The majority of the increase is salaries and wages, including district courts, appellate courts, Office of Judicial Administration, information services, and judicial and professional review. That also includes an increase of 422,000 in contractual services, and the agency indicates that due to a limited information technology staff available, vendors may be necessary to assist with any modification or development of applications. With that, I will stand for questions on FY24.
Thank you, Martin. Questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you.
Next, Senator Petty. Martin, please apologize.
Sorry, I'm sorry I was slow, slow to move. Martin, on the part about the judicial salary increases, and we rank 43rd out of 50, do you know if this salary increase would go through where we would fit in the country?
I have not had those discussions exactly where that would fit in, but I'm pretty sure they will know.
Okay, thanks.
I bet we'll get an answer for that in a minute. Any other questions for Martin? Seeing none, thank you, Martin.
Thank you.
We'll start out with the Chief Justice, Marla Luker, proponent in person. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Billinger and committee members, for allowing us to present the judicial branch budget request. It's my privilege to be with you this morning. In January, I had the opportunity to speak to you about the state of the judiciary. And in that address, I explained the initiatives and the accomplishment of judges and employees across the state and the achievements that we had made in 2022. A few of these included rolling out the centralized case management system, now operating in 100 counties, convening the Mental Health Summit, increasing the number of self-help centers, and implementing new specialty courts. These projects require innovation, creativity, persistence, and hard work by judicial branch employees and judges. As this suggests, the judicial branch is nothing without its personnel, and their efforts affect your constituents. Just as these employees are the core and the heart of our progress, they are the heart of our budget. That is in large part because of the funding structure of the court system. Counties pay for almost all of the hard assets and everything else needed to run the judiciary except for salaries and that building across the street. The state shoulders the cost of paying the salaries and providing benefits to the workforce we need to fulfill the judicial branch's mission of providing a venue for Kansans to obtain a fair and impartial resolution of disputes. Because our budget is almost entirely about compensating employees and judges and providing an adequate workforce, You may feel like every time I'm before you, you're hearing the same song. And you do. The verse is only 9 words long. Please fund market wages and provide adequate staffing levels. As you well know, the Kansas Legislature by statute codified the first words of our song. KSA 75-5151 directs that the value of compensation for state employees will be primarily based on establishing the market value of the job. Consistent with that statutory directive, 2 years ago, you committed to bring our employees to market pay. Then last session, you appropriated funding for a COLA, allowing our employees to stay at market pay as calculated in 2021. I express my sincere gratitude on behalf of our employees. Our judges and employees have spoken to me about the enormous positive benefits of those salary increases on hiring, retention, and morale. But as we have all experienced personally, market forces and inflation are eroding our daily lives as inflation impacts us. We must keep those salaries at market rate to be able to attract them because the market has responded and it's already making it harder for us to compete with the private sector. Because of this, our budget asks for a cost of living increase for employee positions so that we can continue to offer market pay to attract and retain the employees we need. We assign these employees with important responsibilities that affect the daily lives of your constituents. We must offer competitive salary to employ the most qualified and capable candidates. And that cost of living increase is important to our efforts to attract and retain those individuals who perform highly technical and critical work. Unlike the progress toward market pay we have made with judicial branch employees, our judges remain significantly below market. Judicial pay fell markedly below market when judges received no pay increases for nearly a decade. So what is our market? Our competition in the marketplace comes from 2 places: the myriad of places that lawyers work and judges in other court systems. As to the first group, I mentioned in my State of the Judiciary that some firms from Kansas City area are now paying new attorneys, that is, those people who just graduated from law school, more than the state pays for the Kansas District Court judges who will resolve the lawsuits filed by those new attorneys. While we do not ask to raise judicial salaries to private practice levels, we cannot ignore the gap. In times like now, when the compensation gap between private practice and judicial pay grows too wide, we cannot attract candidates. Recently, the Attorney General highlighted for you the disparity in pay for attorney positions in state government. He let you know the difficulty his office is experiencing in recruiting legal talent to his office. The judiciary faces the same struggle. Another indicator of market pay is to look at what others who perform the same tasks get paid by other employers. For our district court judges, the only in-state comparable position is that of the federal district court judge. Our salaries don't compare well with those. Federal district court judges make $83,688 more than our state district court judges. Those are our 2 in-state market competitors. We are asking you to use a different measuring stick, though, one more affordable for Kansas taxpayers. For well over a decade, the judicial branch has suggested you compare Kansas judicial salaries to those of judges in our neighboring states. I have heard no one suggest another market comparable, either by someone in the legislature or anyone else. So I will, once again, sing the same song. I urge you to match the average of the salaries paid to the trial court judges in those 4 states after making an adjustment for the cost of living variances between the 5 states. All 4 of our neighbors pay their trial court judges significantly more than Kansas judges get paid. A competitive salary is critical to attracting well-qualified candidates. For instance, many of our open judicial positions in the last year failed to draw the number of well-qualified applicants to allow for selection from professionally diverse candidates. We are struggling to meet the standard you set for judicial selection when, by statute, a few years ago, the legislature directed nominating commissions to send up to 5 candidates to the governor. Formerly, it had been 3. So it is now 3 to 5. In Southeast Kansas, an open district judge position drew only that minimum level of 3 applicants. One of those was a sitting magistrate judge in the district. We have had other openings where only 4 attorneys applied. One opening was in Emporia, another in Salina, and a third in the 9th Judicial District, which consists of McPherson and Harvey counties. The recruitment challenge extends to the magistrate judge positions as well. As you know, magistrate judge positions can be held by non-attorneys. So we are also competing with those market forces. This past year in Manhattan, we had only 2 applicants. We had only 1 applicant for a Coffee County magistrate position. Just across the state applicant numbers for all positions have plunged below past experiences. In addition, open judicial positions increasingly draw from attorneys who are in the private sector. Are in the public sector. For example, in the 3 district court positions that drew only 4 applicants, each group of the 4 had only 1 attorney in private practice. What this means is we are not attracting the diversity of experience we hope for in filling these important judicial positions. We fare no better in elected positions. Most positions are filled through uncontested primary elections. There's enough humidity in the room. I'm having trouble with my paper, sorry. For the Kansas judiciary to have the professional diversity it needs, we must return to market rate pay for judges to better compete for legal talent. Adopting this proposal also better compensates judges for the incredibly difficult work that they do. Judges have profound responsibilities. They impose serious criminal sanctions, resolve heartbreaking family disputes, navigate complex business litigation, and preside over many other procedures that result in life-altering judgments. The impact of these decisions on the lives of Kansans compels us to do our best to attract well-qualified Kansans and to maintain a strong and efficient judicial system. As an alternative to the proposal we have offered today, we note that last week in Senate Ways and Means introduced Senate Bill 152. That legislation proposes a mechanism for setting salaries of state officers, including appellate judges, by tying those salaries to congressional pay. My office has worked with Senator Clays, who requested introduction of the bill, to craft a balloon amendment that would, if adopted, apply to all state judges, appellate and district court, and would link state pay with federal judges rather than to federal legislative pay. Don't panic. We're not asking you to pay those federal wages I mentioned just a few minutes ago. Rather, what we have done in that balloon amendment is specified a percentage of the salary of the federal judges that would correlate with our budget requests to you. So essentially, that percentage would end up being the same as what an appropriation of the adjusted salary of the district court judges in our surrounding states would have been. Beyond those salary requests, as you heard from Martin, our budget asked for 7 positions to enhance cybersecurity and to allow the Office of Judicial Administration to provide increased assistance to courts statewide. More specifically, as he's told you, we request 4 cybersecurity positions. These positions would strengthen our network as we near the completion of bringing all district courts into our new centralized case management system. Our increased reliance on technology and remote applications magnifies the importance of a strong cyber defense, and these 4 positions will assist in that effort. 2 other positions, the Access to Justice Lead and the Director of Criminal Justice and Family Services, will spearhead initiatives to assist Kansans at the local level. The Access Justice Lead will lead the Self-Help Center effort by providing technical assistance. As you may know, self-help centers provide resources to people who are representing themselves in court, including detailed instructions on common case types like uncontested divorces or modification of child support or expungement. The Access to Justice Lead will outline and ensure compliance with standards, and it will also collect data about the use of the self-help centers. The other position, the Director of Criminal Justice and Family Services, will assist district courts in complying with duties related to child welfare, family and probation services, and expand the direct support that the Office of Judicial Administration can provide to the district court in these areas. The last position we seek is a deputy clerk specialist. The rollout of the centralized case management system has placed additional duties on the position of clerk specialist. This position would work in the Office of Judicial Administration and provide assistance to all 105 counties. The deputy clerk specialist would support the trial clerk position statewide and again help standardize court practices in this area. To close, I would again like to express my appreciation for your help in these past years. The judicial branch faced significant needs in supporting the stability of our funding and bolstering district court capacity with new judge positions. You answered our needs, and we are extremely grateful. The judicial branch, I need not remind you, is a core function of government. And this budget request focuses on getting our judges to our shared goal of competitive and market rate salaries. We ask you to help strengthen the Kansas court system by supporting these enhancements for judicial branch employees. Mr. Chairman, I will stand for questions, of course, and then with your permission, we'll ask to present testimony from Chief Judge Laura Lewis from Dodge City, Don Rouse, the court administrator from Butler County District Court, and Stephanie Smith, the judicial administrator.
Thank you, Chief Justice. I think we'll just do a few questions and then you won't have standard. You mentioned the salary for 4 states surrounding us. How much difference do we have between, I'm guessing they're all 4 different.
They are 4 different. Let me find the right information here. I have that. I said, for some reason, the paper's really sticking here. Okay. So our current salary for district judge is $148,912. So that's where we start. Colorado and Nebraska are the higher of the 4. Colorado is at $183,816 and Nebraska is $183,546. So $37,000 range increase. Missouri is third with 163,082. And then Oklahoma is closest at about 10,000 more, 158,206. But to answer what might be a question that you asked earlier of Martin, the National Center for State Courts gives their salary tracker for states and territories every 6 months because of the differences in how apportionment works in the various states and territories. The last I looked, Colorado and Nebraska were in the mid-20s, and Nebraska and Oklahoma higher than that. I would estimate that we don't know what those states would get in the future, so I don't know where we would end up ranking with that, but it would probably drop our ranking by at least 10 places and put us closer to being in the middle of states across the country.
Thank you. Other questions? Senator Fagg?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Your Honor, for your presentation. How many open positions do you have today on that FTE, around 2,000?
I don't know if Stephanie can answer that question off the hand, but I can't, and we will certainly, if Stephanie can't, we'll get you that information.
Senator Fagg?
Another follow-up would be, how many, so we're comparing states, have we lost anybody to other states because they pay more?
You may recall the testimony of Chief Judge Brad Ambrosier before this committee, I think it was last session. He gave an example of an attorney in their area. He is down, as he likes to say, he can step outside his courthouse and throw a stone over into the Oklahoma border. And they had a very talented attorney who they had all hoped might be the future judge as he is looking at retirement. That judge decided to practice both in the Oklahoma and Kansas, as most attorneys in that area do. That attorney decided to move across the line, lifelong Kansas, generational Kansan, to Oklahoma with her family. So she had residence in Oklahoma to take an Oklahoma position because of the increased judge pay. So that's at least one example I could give you.
Senator Petty?
Thank you. So you said earlier that federal judges make $88,000 more than a Kansas district court judge, is that correct?
Correct.
So in that case, that we're talking about federal, but if you look at the comparison that you gave us, so that range there, it comes down between as much as 40,000 down to 10,000 with our neighboring states.
Right.
Correct?
Yeah, yes, that's approximately correct. Their current trial court judge in 3 blocks over here, it would currently be making $232,600.
The federal.
The federal judge, yes, I'm sorry, should specify. And then they're a block and a half from the state court judge who is making that $148,912.
Thank you.
Doing the same kind of casework.
And I just have one other question. It's on the Access to Justice Lead, the self-help centers. How many self-help centers do we have currently?
8 is the number I'm remembering. I'm going to look for affirmation.
I was so impressed with the one in Johnson County that's available.
And it is amazing the help that those provide to people. They make a real difference.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Chief Justice. We appreciate you being here today.
Thank you again for the privilege of being here.
Next, we'll have Judicial Administrator Stephanie Smith. Stephanie, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you. Could I defer to Chief Judge Lewis, because I stand at the end for all your technical questions? Would that be okay?
That'd be great.
Thank you.
We'll move on then. Chief Judge Laura Lewis. Welcome, committee.
Thank you very much. It's Been a while since I've stood on this side of the podium. So, well, good morning, Chairman Billinger and members of the committee. Before I start my opening remarks, I would just like to take an opportunity to first thank you for allowing me to be here today, and also to extend a thanks on behalf of myself and my fellow judges and judicial branch for the increases that have already been made to our salaries and other pay raises that have been given to our branch. I can personally tell you that it gave a huge morale boost in a time after COVID, that there was not a lot of good things that were going on at the ground level in the judiciary. As indicated, my name is Laura Lewis. I'm the chief judge in the 16th Judicial District. I have 6 counties in my district. Those are Ford, Gray, Meade, Clark, Comanche, and Kiowa counties. I currently my primary office is in Ford County, and however, I am a lifelong resident of Meade County. I have 2 other district judges in my district with me. We also have 5 non-lawyer magistrate judges that practice. We have 1 chief clerk administrator, 2 administrative assistants, 1 court reporter, 1 transcriptionist, 17 clerks, 1 chief CSO, 5 deputy CSOs, court services officers, and 2 secretaries. And I list those out for you partially to kind of give you an idea of, just on a daily basis, the number of people that it takes to operate our judicial district. In our district, Ford County is the largest county, and it is certainly the county that we have the most case filings. And I kind of had to chuckle when I heard the question earlier of whether or not case filings were going down. I can't speak to the actual numbers and the statistics, but I can certainly tell you from where I'm sitting, case filings are not slowing down. And one of the things I would point out with that is a number of the cases that we deal with are criminal cases where there are no filing fees. And so sometimes we will have, 2 and 3 or even more cases filed against one defendant. So we still have all those cases that come before us, but there is no filing fee that would be reflected in the docket fees. In my district, the 3 district judges, we also, besides sitting in Ford County, we're all located in Ford County, we also go out on our circuit. And so that means that at least once a month, we go to all 6 counties. And we are in those counties for circuit docket days. And then also our magistrates come into Ford County and each hold a day of court and handle a docket for us there in Ford County. The average driving that I do when on circuit week is about 408 miles in 3 days, and that's going from courthouse to courthouse, and it's not uncommon for me to have cases in 3 different counties on any given circuit day. That is a lot of traveling in a very short amount of time, and I can assure you that I feel it at the end of that week. Just to kind of give you a little bit more of an overview of what the kinds of things that we deal with as judges on a regular basis. As many of you I'm sure know, we have 2 major packing plants in Ford County, and at those packing plants, we have a very high number of non-English speakers that we deal with in court on a regular basis. Just over the span of the last couple of weeks, we kept track of the different languages that we were dealing with in all of our courts, ranging from traffic to criminal cases to small claims, limited actions, domestic. These were the languages that we dealt with: Spanish, Quiche, Sudanese, Somali, Arabic, Vietnamese, French, Creole, and German. And then I also had the privilege of dealing with a language called Oaxateco, which is an ancient Mayan language I've come to learn that only about 15,000 people in the world still speak, and I had 7 of them sitting in my courtroom for a jury trial. And so that was a very interesting experience. Prior to taking the bench, I was in private practice. I was I've been practicing since 2004. I primarily practice domestic law in my private practice. I started out working for a solo practitioner when I went out and first came out in practice. Then at a later time in 2009, I was elected, or 2008, I was elected as Meade County Attorney. I served in that position along with my private practice until 2018 when I resigned it to take the judge position. I also served as a domestic mediator, a civil mediator, and a critical case manager for high conflict divorces. I had a very successful private practice that I really enjoyed. I also enjoyed my Meade County attorney job where I handled criminal prosecution as well as handling or working as county counsel for Meade County. The reason that I decided to give up that practice, even though doing so did bring a pay cut for me, was because I've always wanted to be a judge. That was always something that I saw my career path going towards. I was very fortunate in the opportunity that was given to me. When I started law school, my son was 3 years old, and he told me that, Mom, I never want to be a lawyer because I know what you deal with. I see the kind of things that you have to do. But ironically enough, he's sitting in this room here, and he is now a 2L law student at Washburn. So I tell him, never say never. Now, I don't know if I'll ever get him on the bench, but I have goals. In the practice of law in Western Kansas, there are a lot of really qualified attorneys. I've had the privilege of practicing with and against several of those, and I've enjoyed that practice. However, up until the time that I was appointed to the bench, I had practiced in front of the same 3 judges my entire career. Shortly before COVID, we had one judge that decided to retire, and I was then appointed by Governor Collier to take his position and finish out his term, his unexpired term. 16th is an elected position or an elected district. So I took the bench, I was appointed, I took the bench in January of 2019. Then I put my name in for chief judge because we had another judge that decided to retire because he just, quite frankly, didn't want to deal with all of the problems and things that came with COVID, and he decided to go ahead and hang it up. I was named chief judge in June of 2020, and then I was finally elected to hold my own, to start my own 4-year term in November of 2020. That was an uncontested election. No one else ran against me. Since that time, we've had, as I stated, we've had another judge that retired, and my colleague who's now on the bench, Judge Stein, also was an uncontested election. In the 149 years of the 16th Judicial District, I have the honor of being the first female district judge. I am also the first chief female judge. Now, to me, that's kind of odd because as I look across at my colleagues across the state, there are a lot of female judges. And so as I kind of ponder that, I know that I'm not the best and the brightest out there in our district, but I have to go back and relate that back that I am sure, I know for a fact from conversations with my colleagues that part of that is because they know that there would be a pay cut or they can make more in private practice, either in their private practices or in their upper level governmental jobs like the county attorney positions than they can coming to sit on the bench. And so I firmly believe that we are missing out on a lot of really qualified individuals that could do the job as judge. And we need those people there. The judge position is kind of a thankless job. I'm sure that you all can probably relate to that. We don't get, we deal with people on their worst days for whatever reason, whether it be that they're there for a criminal case or they're there for a, domestic case. It's a lot of stress. It is a lot of hard work. And at the end of the day, sometimes we find ourselves questioning whether or not, why we do that. For me, it's because The legal system is important. The judicial system is important. We are elected to provide the citizens of the state of Kansas with a forum and access to justice. And so that's very important for me that we keep doing that. One of the things that I've seen since COVID is a huge shift in the practice of law and the way that courts are handled. I think we were shoved into it somewhat unwillingly. I do believe that there have been some great changes that have been made. I am not a huge Zoom fan. I will say that off the top. Zoom has been very helpful in keeping courts moving. But I still personally have a lot of concerns procedurally and things like that with that. My belief is our courts need to be open, citizens need to be able to come in, and we need to be present in that court. However, I do believe that there are some, very great uses for it. There's some status hearings, some trainings, things like that, that I think that can be really good for us to continue using that kind of technology. But with that technology has come brought increased strains to our system as well. There have been clerks that now have to sit in and help run courts that they did not have those job requirements before. We've all had to become much more technology savvy, which is probably a good thing, but sometimes that has distracted us from doing our job, which is being able to hear the cases and make the decisions that we need to make. Since I've taken this position, besides the turnover that we had in judges, we've also had a huge turnover in staff. Again, in my 15 years of practice prior to taking the bench, I could tell you the name of every single court clerk, how long she'd been there, what kind of muffin she liked, or what kind of goodie, you'd take over to help encourage getting that. Could you just stay for 5 more minutes so I can get this brief filed? But upon taking the bench, as chief judge, the responsibilities fallen to myself and my chief clerk administrator. We have had to fill deputy positions in all 5 of our outlying counties. We have also had to fill a position in Ford County. We still have a position in Ford County that remains unfilled. And of those outlying 5 counties that I filled, we've had to re-interview and refill 4 of them because after we hired them, we lost them to similar positions either in the county or the private sector that opened up with better benefits, better pay, and comparable work duties, but with a lot less stress, and largely the stress that was brought on by the increased hostility from the public that we faced after COVID-19. Another area that I really feel very strongly about and is a great example of why we are asking for the increased pay for our staff and our employees is the area of court reporters. I don't know how familiar any of you are with court reporters, but they are a vital function for our judicial system. I am very fortunate my court reporter has served our district for 27.5 years. She is just, besides just being amazing, the speed at which she can take down and make an accurate record, she is indispensable to myself and the other judges because she really does help us track in trials. She helps us keep things going. She helps us keep track of exhibits and things of that nature. When I started practicing, we had 3 full-time court reporters. We lost one in 2005. We lost another one in 2016. They both went out to private practice to freelance work. They do things like going and taking depositions for attorneys and different things like that because they can make so much more money. We still have 1 open court reporter position in our district. We ended up reclassifying the second open court reporter position. Before I took the bench, it was reclassified to a transcriptionist job. And so that it could take some of the pressure off of our court reporter, the transcriptionist will transcribe the digitally recorded hearings for us and get those transcripts made from that. I know just through conversations with my court reporter that the Court Reporters Association is actively trying to recruit and train. I know that they've talked to community colleges around to see if they can try and get programs started to encourage, people going into that profession. But it's really hard to make those arguments, even if we have the programs available to train them, when it's hard to entice them to come into the judicial branch when they can get paid so much more outside of it.
I don't want to interrupt you, but normally, when we get close to the end of a session here, there's another meeting supposed to be in here shortly. And I hate to cut you off, but if you have anything that you didn't get a very briefly touch on, I'd appreciate it. If not, do we have any questions? Seeing none. Thank you for being here today. I really apologize for cutting you short. It's just, we only have so much time for these committee meetings. And
Again, I really appreciate you taking the time to listen, and I would just respectfully request that you approve our budget requests.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Committee, we also have Court Administrator Dawn Rouse. Is Dawn here? If you could be pretty brief, at 12 o'clock, there's supposed to be another committee in here, so I apologize. But
You have my written testimony, and I will just say that I'm the court administrator of the 13th Judicial District, which is Butler, Elk, and Greenwood. So I have three pretty distinct different counties. One that is a pretty suburban bedroom community of Wichita, and then two very rural communities with fewer services. I did want to at least express gratitude on behalf of the employees of the judicial branch, bringing our salaries up to market rate. I had at least half of my clerks in the Butler County offices that had part-time jobs on top of their clerk positions. That did allow all of them to give up their part-time jobs, which really did increase job satisfactions, and we are grateful for that. I did want to say that it is so vitally important to us to keep our salary at that market rate. We are seeing, well, in my district and in my sister districts, we have seen a lot of retirement. The pandemic was relatively hard on staff. And so people that are getting closer to retirement are considering it more. And what we're seeing is when we have people leave, we are only getting, like I gave an example, our Butler County clerk, we had one application. Now, I was extremely lucky it was an application with some experience, but we are seeing a very small amount of applications compared to our turnover. So I just wanted to make you all aware of that. But I will turn it over to Stephanie, and thank you so much, but I'm sure Stephanie has plenty of questions.
thank you, appreciate it. Are there any questions for Stephanie? Seeing none, I think we all know that how important this is, and I appreciate each and every one of you for being here today to plead your case. We appreciate it.
Thanks. And I'll follow up with the questions that were asked here.
Okay,
Okay.
great, thank you. We'll close our hearing, and deliberations will open. Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move we accept the governor's recommendation for judicial branch budget for FY 2023 and 2024, and we address salary at a later date.
We have a motion, we have a second by Senator Kirshen. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Motion carries. Committee, that concludes our work for today. We are adjourned.